this week was all Proverbs and Psalms, right? And so we've talked about Psalms before, or the Psalms before, and there are no more Messianic Psalms. However, there were several interesting things in the Proverbs section, so that's actually what I'm going to focus on today. I'm not going to focus on any of the Psalms. I'm going to focus on Proverbs, and we're going to focus a good bit of time, most of our time probably, on the famous chapter 31 noble wife passage. Oh, that's funny. All right. So note that the noble wife, this is in chapter 31 of Proverbs. Note that, starting at verse 10, but it'll be a while before we start. Note that the noble wife will be described in the same terms as Lady Wisdom, right? So obviously that's not by accident. So the noble wife is going to be viewed here as an embodiment of Lady Wisdom, right? So that's a good thing. Who did we say the book of Proverbs is written to? Like young Jewish people so they can learn? Did we say that? Who's the major audience that's going to be reading Proverbs or hearing Proverbs? It's really more for young men, right? It's for young men, okay? And so note, this is not an instruction manual for how a woman should act, right? Which is what we often take it as. This is an instruction manual for the type of woman that a man should want to marry, right? That's the point of the passage, or one of the major points. Now, obviously, if it's teaching that this is the type of woman that a man should want to marry, then clearly, by extension, you can say that clearly that's the type of woman a woman should want to be, right? However, its first audience is for men. And again, you want to follow Lady Wisdom, not Lady Folly, right? Lady Folly may seem, entertaining enough, but you want to follow Lady Wisdom. And so here, once you get to the whole end of the book, it's saying, okay, this is what a wise wife would look like, right? A lady who embodies the wisdom that we've just been talking about, okay? Note that this poem is also an acrostic, right? And if you'll remember, an acrostic, what is that?
First letters spell
Yes.
out.
Beautiful, yes. So the first letter, so each verse in Hebrew, obviously not in English, in Hebrew starts with each letter of the Hebrew alphabet, right? And so as you go through, and so why do you think they would do that?
Memory. Memorize it.
That could be. Now that's clearly an acrostic that certainly helps in memorization. But when we're talking about the noble wife and everything, and we're describing her, what does that also tell you? We're describing her from A to Z, in our alphabet, right? So you're describing her from A to Z. Now, obviously, it doesn't literally contain everything that you would desire in a woman, right? However, that's kind of one of the major points of an acrostic, okay? All right, a noble wife. And so we're going to spend more time. And it may be a positive thing. They all might be like, oh, praise God. We're actually going to spend a lot more time just in passages, kind of like we used to do, where we would do, we're going to do this whole passage verse by verse and talk about it in some detail. Because there is a lot going on. I just want you to kind of understand. It's a famous proverb section. And so I just wanted to spend some time in it. And it'll be, like I said, it'll be like Old Home Week. All right.
Do we know what this acrostic says in Hebrew? If you put all these first letters?
No. It's A through Z. It's just the alphabet in order. It doesn't. It's not a acronym.
Okay, so
It's an acrostic. Yes, good question. Yeah. So an acronym obviously spells something out. An acrostic is every letter just straight through the alphabet. So for us, it would be A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J.
So is it just that it has every
Yeah.
in that
No,
order?
it's in that
A,
order.
B, C,
It's
D.
in that order.
Okay.
Yep. It's absolutely in that order. Yep. Good question. All right. An excellent wife, who can find? Right? So she's a rare thing. Okay. She is far more precious than jewels. Precious than jewels. Note that 3:13. So you don't have to go back to it. Oh, that's funny. I say 3:13, but then I have 3:15. It's actually 3:15. She is more precious than jewels, talking about Lady Wisdom. She is more precious than jewels, and nothing you desire can compare with her. Well, again, in 31:10, the noble wife says she is far more precious than jewels, right? And so it's the same wording. The word here translated as excellent is hayil, and it has strong military associations, okay? So it means faculty, power, strength, wealth, property, competent, brave, landowner, it's used in that terminology too, and army, okay? So in other words, so when we look at a word in Hebrew, for instance, we look at the semantic domain. Like, what are all the meanings that this word could have? And how do we know what all the meanings this word could have are? Well, we go and we read Hebrew literature, bless you, including the Old Testament, right? And we look at the context of all those words, and we say, okay, well, clearly in this part it means whatever, right? And so there is some variation. That's why you get kind of some of the things seem so strange, like, it can mean property, but it can also mean army. So you have to look at the context. But each Hebrew word and Greek words, they have different meanings that they could potentially mean, and context provides the meaning. And so here the context is a little but because of the fact that we continue to use other military terminology throughout, it seems to be that that's what it is. So it's indicating that the noble woman is engaged in the battle of life, right? That's why it uses military language. She is battling it out with the common, or I don't want to say common, but the normal day's affairs, which for the noble wife are fairly spectacular, all right? She is a warrior. So note that who can find, it seems to be that it's rare, but also it sets a challenge to the young male audience, like, hey, who can do this, right? And you know how men are. They're like, well, I can do it. I'm going to be the first one, especially when you're young and you're not worried about breaking your bones and stuff. You're pretty much in for anything. If somebody lays down a challenge, you're like, yeah, I can do that. And then you get older and you're like, yeah, I don't want to die. So, all right. So then on to Proverbs 31:11, it says, the heart of her husband trusts in her, and he will have no lack of gain. So again, he will lack no gain. So the word there is also used in 1:13. It says, we shall find all precious goods. We shall fill our houses with plunder. And in that context, it was the young men that you don't want to hang around. It was the guys that go and steal from other people and do things like that, right? And so note, he will have no lack of gain with this wife. Notice that in Proverbs 16:19, it says, it is better to be a lowly spirit with the poor than to divide the spoil, same word, with the proud, right? So again, there you have this whole idea of taking stuff, right? And so the point there is, if he marries a noble wife, then he will come to all of this gain honestly, right? And so don't go hanging out with the wrong crowd and getting gain dishonestly. Marry a noble wife and she will help you gain, right? If you marry the right woman, then she's going to help you out. It also indicates again that she fights and uses strategy to gain for the household. Now, it doesn't literally mean that she's going and struggling with people like physically, but it's just saying that she's strategic. And as it goes through it, clearly she's very strategic. She's strategic about the way that she carries on household affairs. Because keep in mind, the woman is over the household, and we think today, and I'm not minimizing it, but even in times now, and I know we have lots of times, we're both parents work or whatever. But, when we talk about a woman being over the household, usually we think in terms of, cooking, cleaning, raising the children and stuff, right? And you have, how many of you have a lot of kids? Like, what's the most kids we have in here? Like, we only have one. So, some of you have 3. Does anybody have more than, you've got 4? Okay, so 4 kids, right? Okay, so there you have. Well, in this day, you had tons of kids and tons of servants, right? And so the woman was responsible for all of these people. And so this is a big deal, right? And so that's the thing. And so she's responsible for everybody. And then, of course, the man as well. Okay. Note that he trusts in her. But the Bible teaches against trusting in people and nations, right? It says you should trust in Yahweh, right? And so Psalm 118, 8 through 9 says, it is better to take refuge in the Lord than to trust in man. It is better to take refuge in the Lord than to trust in princes, right? Micah 7, 5 says, put no trust in a neighbor, have no confidence in a friend, guard the doors of your mouth from her who lies in your arms, right? So again, the point there is you don't put your trust in people, you put your trust in God. However, she is elevated in her position because she fears the Lord, right? And so at Proverbs 31:30 it says, charm is deceitful and beauty is vain, but a woman who fears the Lord is to be praised. And so that's going to be the reason that he trusts in her, because she fears the Lord, right? So she's going to put others first and God first as the Lord desires, right?
Is this trust as strong as a trust in like it said, don't trust in any man or anything like that?
Mm-hmm.
Is this translation just a little bit less trusting? In other words, I'm not like trusting in her for my life and for like I would trust in Yahweh. Is this trust word not quite as strong?
So the word itself, I'm going to assume, and without looking at it, I'm going to assume it's the same type of trust, right? Because you get love, right? You're on the right track because, love in Greek, for instance, I don't even know about Hebrew, but love in Greek, you've got, 3 words, and they clearly mean different things that we just translate as love, right? So some is like brotherly love, and then you have intimate love, and, different things like that. So in that, I would say the word is probably the same. However, the context is different, right? So if I trust in the Lord, then I'm going to trust in my wife, of course, who trusts in the Lord, but I'm not going to trust in her for salvation and things like that, because I have enough sense as a wise, as we're doing wisdom, as a wise God-fearer, and as my wife is a wise God-fearer, we're going to make those right decisions, right? I'm going to trust in her and things that are under her, purview. But obviously, I'm not going to trust in her for the things that I should rely on God. And I think, interestingly, wisdom is part of that. It's like, so when do I trust in my wife and when do I trust in, God? Like, for instance, you could think of it this way, right? When do I trust in the doctor versus when do I trust in my wife, right? So if I scrape my arm or whatever it is, some minor thing that I'm like, I don't know about this, what do I do? And she's like, okay, do this, that, and the other thing. Well, if it's a minor thing, I'm gonna be like, okay, yeah, that seems logical, right? However, if I chop my arm off, and she says, well, here, just put this around it and sleep it off. Well, that's something that I probably shouldn't, expect my wife to be in control of. I'm going to need to go to a doctor, right? And so, similar thing. Another great question. All right.
You have to go to the doctor.
Yeah.
You have to go.
I mean, if I chop my arm off, I'm going to the doctor. So, preferably in an ambulance. All right. Okay, so note too, we didn't do it yet. So at 31:12, it says, she does him good and not harm all the days of her life, right? So note, in this context, in the context of the passage, we are talking about economic gain, right? So in other words, he's going to be successful. She's going to help him be successful, right? All right, she seeks wool and flax and works with willing hands, okay? So note, she seems to be, they may obviously make a lot of money, and she's part of the deal. Like, she's obviously bringing in quite a bit of resources, let's say resources. And so she makes clothes and stuff, and then she's going to use those clothes to barter and such. So you have wool, and then you have flax, which is some sort of a plant, right? And you can take the stuff off of it, and I guess they make clothes or whatever out of it. So note that clearly she is skilled in seeking and extracting the raw materials to make this clothing, right? From both these plants and, animals and stuff. The process of making wool and flax plants into clothing was quite involved, okay, particularly back in that time. And at Elephantine, which is a island that's on the Nile River, so over in Egypt, woolen garments, right, could go for as much as 2 months' wages, okay? and then your cheaper linen garments could go for a half a month's wage, right? So it'd take half a month's wage to go get a dress, basically, right, basically. All right. So we're talking expensive stuff. So she's making all of this. I mean, she's able to barter for all kinds of nice things and all of that. And then she's making money. So she's doing well. She is like the ships of the merchant. She brings her food from afar. I don't know what's wrong with my mouth. It does not want to work correctly. She brings her food from afar. Okay, so note that ships buy and sell from all over the place. Well, the noble wife works with her hands, and then she trades in the local markets. She's only trading in the local market. She's not traveling from place to place. But she goes to the local markets, and she's able to afford or trade for, which is still affording, exotic foods, right? Which a lot of this is going to be grains and things. And so she's able to bring home things that are quite spectacular, right? Exotic foods and stuff like that. Look, I mean, I'll be honest with you. It would be like, we think back in the day, like, when I was growing up, I mean, listen, I ate fried spam, quite often, and because that's what we could afford, and it's funny back then, like I love fried chicken even to this day. My mom makes the best fried chicken ever. And, I guess back in the day, it was cheaper to buy like chicken and stuff than it was to, I guess because people didn't go out to eat and stuff, so it was like, and chicken, I guess, was cheaper than other meats, whatever. I don't know. But, and I guess technically still it is today.
Chicken. They would do whole
Yeah.
chickens.
Okay. Yeah. So she would, she'd make like chicken legs. Oh my gosh, so good. And so, that's what we could afford at the time. And so, then later, my parents got divorced, and later on, we remarried, and my stepfather, he had a job that, had more resources, right? And so we had other things like, I didn't even know that there were like fast food restaurants and stuff. I was like shocked when I saw that, I was like, what is this? Yeah, I know, right? I'm like, what is this? And so, but it's the same kind of thing, right? So she's able, because she's successful, she's able to bring things home to the family and open them up to things that they wouldn't normally be able to procure. Note, Lady Wisdom calls out in Proverbs 9:5, "Come eat of my bread and drink of the wine I have mixed," right? And then it goes through and it talks about, giving yourself to wisdom. And so again, similar to Lady Wisdom, she's able to bring home grains and such that they wouldn't normally be. Like she has good bread, right? She's got the good stuff. She's got like the O'Charlie's yeast rolls, right? 31:15, she rises while it is yet night and provides food for her household and portions for her maidens. So the word for food in this verse, terep, usually means prey, right? So it's like used for when you go out and hunt animals and stuff, or if a predator takes down an animal like a lioness, that's the word that's used there. And so again, she's not going out and, like shooting animals with bows and arrows. But again, it's this whole military hunting, going after stuff. Like she's going after like complicated stuff. She's not just, she's not just going to the, the fast food restaurant every night and bringing home, Chick-fil-A for the kids. Not that there's anything wrong with that, because I could probably eat Chick-fil-A every day. Except Sunday. But see, if you do it like the manna, you could go ahead and get enough Chick-fil-A on Saturday and then just hold it over and just warm it up in the air fryer, so. Not that I have it plotted out or anything, but just for the record, we've never done that. Even though there are foods though that I plot out. When I buy this, half of it's going to be leftovers, and sometimes some foods are even better leftover. Were those positive I heard, or no? Not Chick-fil-A. Yeah, no, I was kidding about Chick-fil-A. Yeah.
But like Italian food is better.
Yeah. Italian food's good stuff. Yep. Yep. Yeah. Anything really that has sauce in it, that sauce, it's like it has time to really get inside there. Yeah. Yes. It really just. Yeah. Sorry. Moving on.
Got some M&M's.
Yeah. All right. Moving on. She considers a field and buys it. With the fruit of her hands, she plants a vineyard, right? So note, she considers a field and buys it, right? She's responsible. And so considers means that she does her due diligence. She researches it. She plans it out. Like what do I need to do, right? And so, again, this is a lot of responsibility. She purchases it through her textile industry. So she's incorporating, right? So she basically owns a textile business. Now she's going to be owning some land and growing some crops, right? So, smart.
She needs a nap.
Do what?
She needs a nap.
Yeah. Yes. No. Well, notice it says she stays up late and gets up early. So, interestingly, though, yeah, that's funny. Did you say she has servants? That's the next thing that I'm about to say. Yeah. So, literally, I wrote in my notes she would use servants to do much of the work, right? So much of the work would be with servants. But think Sarah, Rebecca, and Rachel, right? They worked also, but they had servants, but they're right in there working as well, and they're responsible for the household. Okay, at 31:17, she dresses herself with strength and makes her arms strong. So notice that she dresses herself. It's a little different in the more literal Hebrew translation. It means girds her loins, right? And that's usually, a lot of times it's used for a male. And what it seems to be, if I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure I've read this before. It definitely is when you like have something like you need to run to go somewhere, or like you're running for your life or whatever, you have to gird your loins, right? And what it seems to be is because everybody wore like long robe stuff, right? So you grab it up and you hold it so that you can run and it's not getting in your way, right? And so that seems to be the deal. And so that's what it's saying here. When it says she dresses herself, it's really, I don't know if that's the greatest translation, because it's saying she's preparing mentally to do what she has to do, like running or whatever. Again, she's not literally going to be running, but it's saying she's mentally prepared for the fight that she's about to be in.
Joe, mine says she sets about her work vigorously. Her
Yes.
arms are strong for tasks. There's no girden loins in mine.
Yeah, so vigorously, so that's a good, so again, she's doing it vigorously, which means it's girding your loins, preparing for that hard, whatever the work is. One commentator said, and I did mention it here, it was used when one needed to do a hard, or they refer to it as a heroic act, right? So again, that's what's going on. It's psychological. She's ready. It's like, get ready, do your thing. And then note she makes her arm strong means that she's mentally and physically able to go about the tasks of doing her duties, which are a lot more than we stereotypically think of people in the ancient world, right? Proverbs 31:18, she perceives that her merchandise is profitable. Her lamp does not go out at night. So this was interesting, and this is simply a interpretive issue, right? It's just how you translate it, or how you interpret it, not translate it. It's not a translational issue. It is an interpretive issue, right? So it sounds like, and some commentators said that it's saying, because she certainly gets up early, but everybody would have, and they're saying, well, here it's saying that she stays up late, right? Because her lamp doesn't go out, so she's staying up late. However, her lamp doesn't seem to go out at all, right? It says it doesn't go out at night, and so it seems like maybe it's going all the time, and so that could indicate that she works late, obviously, but it could also indicate that she has gotten to a situation to where she is able to afford enough oil to where her lamps never go out, right? They burn all the time, and she doesn't need to put them out because she can afford to buy more oil, right? And so there were two different commentators, or well, there's multiple commentators, obviously, but there's two different views on that. And so it's interesting. It could go either way, but either way, she's either working really hard and making money, so she's staying up late, or she's working really hard and she has enough money to keep her lamps burning. Either way, it's ultimately the same ultimate end, but it's just, what exactly does it mean?
Yeah, I was thinking it might mean that even though by saying her lamp is always burning, that her responsibilities never end. So even if she's sleeping, she's still responsible for everything. So if something happens, she
So
has to get up and
symbolically,
handle
it would mean that her lamp is always burning.
Like she's always having to
Yeah.
be ready to handle whatever comes up.
Yeah, that's a possibility too. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I have a note that says her door is always open, so she's always willing
Available
accept-
to do what needs to be done. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what's interesting is, I guess, with that interpretation, you could basically put it all together. She has enough to keep her lamps going all the time, and then the fact that the lamps are going all the time means that if she does have to get up in the middle of the night to do something, the lamps are burning. that's interesting. So you could actually, so you guys could put all that together and then boom, you've bridged the gap. We need to write a book. What's funny is like when you get into like scholarly biblical literature and stuff, like maybe you might get like a 20-page paper out of something like that right there. I mean, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying like some minor deal, and you'll read like a 20-page paper that eventually somebody will turn into like a 200-page book. And you're like on one little bitty detail, and you're like, wow, okay. Which whether you keep your lamps going or not, if you read those before bed, you will be asleep. She puts her hands to the distaff, and her hands hold the spindle. Okay, so again, it's got this whole deal of her working and stuff to make the clothing and all. But there could also be a hint here of the goddess in Ugaritic literature, which again, Ugarit is north of Israel. It's where we found that treasure trove of clay tablets and such about Baal and all of that. And so in that Ugaritic literature, you have Anat, who is a goddess, and she uses the distaff. It's a what do they call it, a double spindle, right? And so I guess you use both hands with it or whatever. Obviously, I didn't look into it enough to do all that. But Anat, the goddess, uses it as a weapon, right? So again, you have that whole symbolic idea of she's fighting a battle, and so it could be, close to that. As one commentator argues, she puts her hand to it, or her hands to it is actually a military idiom, meaning that she is engaged in battle, right? However, I searched my library and could not find anything else. I could not find one other commentator that made that argument. So I don't know where he got that. Interestingly, it may be that he got that from that Ugaritic story about Anat. It could be that he's using that to make that argument. Note, though, that she closes her hands on the distaff, but then she opens her hand to the poor at 31:20. She opens her hand to the poor and reaches out her hands to the needy, okay? This is as opposed to the wicked of chapter 30, which we did not obviously look at, but y'all obviously read in your stuff. There are those whose teeth are swords, whose fangs are knives, to devour the poor from off the earth, the needy from among mankind. So you've got those in chapter 30 who abuse the poor, but the noble wife takes care of the poor, right? Proverbs 31:21, she is not afraid of snow for her household, for all her household are clothed in scarlet. Okay, so note, snow falls during the rainy season, and the rainy season is between November and February, and so you don't think of it as snowing in that area, right? And so, but it does apparently. I already did that. Note that she is not afraid of snow because she's prepared for it. Scarlet, note that linen, we talked about linen being cheaper and wool being more expensive, right? So linen was not easily dyed, okay? And so to get scarlet clothes, you have to dye it. So that tells you that she's wearing wool clothes, right? And so that tells you that they're able to afford to wear the more expensive clothing, showing their prosperity. She makes bed coverings for herself. Her clothing is fine linen and purple. Okay, so purple dye was extracted from a seashell off the coast of Phoenicia. So it was very expensive to make purple dye. And so, again, it shows that they are well-to-do. And again, what did the husband do to be well-to-do? Do we know? No. It doesn't sound like anything, which is funny. It's funny because we're getting there. There are scholars who will call this not just the poem of the noble wife, but the poem of the useless husband. Because, seriously, and so it's like an actual debate as to whether this story is teaching, don't be a useless husband. And here you go, 31:23. Her husband is known in the gates when he sits among the elders of the land. Okay, so note, the gates of the city, that's where business is done, judgments are rendered, all of that stuff. So basically, her husband is a politician, right? Now, with maybe not so much of the negative connotation that it has today, I mean, they're actually about the business of the city, okay? And so the fact that she's taking care of home means that he's able to go and do
Be the man.
politicking. He's able to be the man. Yeah. Yes. And he is a leader in the community, right? The fact that he is known means that he is respected, likely, because of his wise judgments and such, but definitely because of his wife's reputation, which extends to his reputation. You can think of it kind of like kids, I guess, which I don't know. Sometimes I guess it doesn't. We stereotype things, right? We assume, good kids have good parents and good parents have good kids. That really is just not, I find that's clearly not true oftentimes, right? But it is kind of the stereotype. You can have both ways. Like you think about, if you think that stereotype, think about preachers' kids, right? The stereotype is really that preachers' kids go wild, right? Well, you would hope the preachers are good, and then if their kids go wild, were they bad parents? It's not so, there's a lot more gray area than that, right? But it would be kind of like that, right? So if the wife is taking care of everything at home, it reflects positively on him. And so it's like kids, where you look at a kid and you're like, wow, he's a well-behaved kid. And you think, yeah, they must have good parents or whatever. And half the time you meet the parents and you're like, how did this happen? Just kidding.
You tell them the apple fell a lot farther.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah. She makes linen garments and sells them. She delivers sashes to the merchant. Strength and dignity are her clothing, and she laughs at the time to come, right? So she laughs in the face of challenges that are in the future, okay? Because she is so prepared. She's so with it. She got it so much together that she's like, nothing's going to stop me. She opens her mouth with wisdom, and the teaching of kindness is on her tongue. Note that she seems to speak like Lemuel's mother, which was just in verses 1 through 9 of the same chapter, which we obviously didn't read, but it's about his mother and the advice that Lemuel got from his mother, so it's kind of like that type of thing. 27 through 29, she looks well to the ways of her household and does not eat the bread of idleness. Her children rise up and call her blessed, her husband also, and he praises her. Many women have done excellently, but you surpass them all. So she receives praise from her family, right? Charm is deceitful and beauty is vain, but a woman who fears the Lord is to be praised. So again, Yahweh is the source of her wisdom, right? So that's why she's so awesome, because she fears the Lord. Give her of the fruit of her hands and let her works praise her in the gates. So she is praised by the community as well, right? And so note that whereas she's putting others first and making others the ones that are in the spotlight so that she can take care of everything, at the very end of Proverbs, she's the one in the spotlight, right? And so again, she embodies Lady Wisdom. This is what a wise wife looks like. This is what a wise young man would look for in a wife. And that's how you end. After you have all this talk about Lady Wisdom and Lady Folly, explain to young men, then at the very end, you get a portrait of what a wise wife would look like and the types of things that she would do. And so it pulls the whole thing together. It's pretty spectacular. All right. Very good. Now, after that, we're just going to go through and we're going to do some, we're going to just take some small bits and pieces. So gossip. All right. Note that Proverbs has a lot to say about gossip, and I'm just going to go over a few things. Proverbs 25, 9 through 10. Says, argue your case with your neighbor himself, and do not reveal another's secret, lest he who hears you bring shame upon you, and your ill repute have no end. Right? If I'm not mistaken, the actual, I think the NLT had, or you may be called a gossip. Right? I think that was specifically the wording used. But note, and this happens. Listen, we've seen all of this, right? So you have a problem with somebody, and instead of going to that person and saying, listen, we need to work this out, what do? We talk about it to everybody that will hear. Be like, can you believe that whatever happened, right? Well, that's just wrong. It's just not the right thing to do. If you have a problem, you should go to the other person and deal with them. Now, sometimes, again, gray areas. I'm not saying there's a gray area about gossiping. No gray areas about gossiping. But as far as going to the other person, sometimes that's, that may be implausible or impossible. Proverbs 25:18, a man who bears false witness against his neighbor is like a war club or a sword or a sharp arrow. Okay, so again, related. Also related to being quarrelsome, right? So then Proverbs 26:20 through 28 says, for lack of wood, the fire goes out, and where there is no whisperer, quarreling ceases. So again, as long as you don't have that one person, yan, 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 we can let this go, right? We can let it go, and then there's that one person who always wants to bring it up. Not good. As charcoal to hot embers and wood to fire, so is a quarrelsome man for kindling strife. Okay? And a lot of times, and I hate to be this way because I know some people probably said it before, it's that person that says, well, I just tell them how like it is. Okay? Well, again, I think a lot of times we use that excuse, well, I just tell them like it is, but really, you're just a jerk, right? I mean, you're just a jerk. And, I mean, most people, when you just tell it like it is, you have no desire to help them in any way. You just want to say in your face, this is how I feel. Not that there's not ever a time that we want to do that, right? However, it's not the right thing to do. And when we say, well, I just tell it like it is, again, you probably didn't do the right thing then, right? Like the glaze covering an earthen vessel are fervent lips with an evil heart. Whoever hates disguises himself with his lips and harbors deceit in his heart, right? So, hypocrites. When he speaks graciously, believe him not, for there are 7 abominations in his heart. Though his hatred be covered with deception, his wickedness will be exposed in the assembly. Whoever digs a pit will fall into it, and the stone will come back on him who starts it rolling. So what comes around goes around, right? Hey.
When you were saying that a while ago, it just made me think, you hear, like, the truth will set you free.
Yes.
And so if you're telling the truth, whether it be something that somebody might not want to hear or not,
yes.
It sounds like that's something saying the opposite of saying the truth.
Yes, good question. So listen, you've done something wrong, okay? I can have 2 motivations. I can be like, oh, David did wrong. I want him to be better. In other words, I want him to realize and to repent and to, I want our friendship to stay intact or whatever it is. And so I'd come at you out of love and beneficial, right? So I'm not just going to come at you and be like calling you names or whatever and be like, you're just an idiot or whatever, right? Or I say, oh, I'm going to get him. He was wrong. I'm going to get him. Well, at that point, it's changed, right? So it's really the mindset. What is my reasoning for doing this? And you often hear that in counseling, right? You say, oh, it just eats me up. I want to go and just tell them. And a good counselor will say, well, what do you want to be the end goal of that, right? Do you want the end goal to be that you were right and that you proved them wrong? Or do you want the end goal to be that you mutually come to a whatever and things get better, right? And so sometimes, and listen, I'm not going to say I've never been in a situation with a person who I was just like, I'm just not going to, not going to mend things with this person, right? Even though that's wrong of me, obviously. But you ask some people, well, which would you rather do? And they're like, no, I want to prove that I'm right and that they're wrong because that guy's an idiot or whatever. I'm sick of him doing this or that or the other thing.
I'm not talking as much about that but if you're wanting to impress upon someone what God's truth is, and you're trying to explain to them that, whether it be them,
Well, in that I would just tell them.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
But not in anger and,
yeah.
Just say, well, the Bible teaches that, or Jesus said, or you can do that in conversation without it being.
I don't want to be too,
No, what this is talking about is where there's contention. There's a contentious issue, and you can approach it in 2 ways. You can either approach it as we need to work this out. Whoever's wrong, it doesn't matter.
Like Zach was saying, what would Jesus do?
Yes.
That kind of
yes.
be where I'll be coming
right.
from. But
yeah.
If
or do I just want to
the value of God?
Yeah. Right.
It
or
might be a little tougher.
Yes. Or do I just want to come to you to prove to you that you're wrong? Right. And so
This is when Robin usually says, and what good is that really gonna do?
Yeah.
That means I should not do it.
Yeah. What good is that really going to do? Yeah, that's it. I mean, that's
a good question.
yeah, that's pretty much it.
And my answers always wanna make me feel better.
Yeah.
And then I usually regret it.
Well, whatever feels good, do it, right? Oh, wait.
Buddy, you were right.
Hey, listen, every person in this room, I'm going to guess, has been in all sides of all of that situation. So, I know I have, right? So, all right. A lying tongue hates its victims, and a flattering mouth works ruin. Okay, so again, good stuff. It is funny if you ever read Mark Twain's, oh my gosh, aphorisms. There's some of them are very similar, but oftentimes he puts them in a funnier way even. All right. So also related, Proverbs 29:8, scoffers set a city aflame, but the wise turn away wrath. Right. So peacekeepers. Right. It's better to keep peace than to let people, just go crazy.
Don't pour gas on the fire.
Yeah, definitely don't pour gas on a fire. But really, if possible, you need to be the person. You need to be the voice of reason, and try to de-escalate.
What do you do if you're trying to be the voice of reason and the person you're trying to reason with is unreasonable?
Well, then sometimes you just have to let people do their
Let
thing.
them fail and walk away and just
Yeah.
say, I did what
Well,
I
I'll
needed
pray
to
for you.
do. I did what I
Which
needed to
means
do.
I'm right, you're wrong.
Yeah. Well, whatever, right? It's not good. It's not a good answer. This conversation is not over, or you didn't win. All right, go ahead. What were you gonna say?
I was just gonna say bless your heart and walk away.
Yeah,
Bless
yeah.
your heart.
Yeah, bless your heart. Oh, thank you. I didn't mean that as a compliment. Yeah. All right, Proverbs 25:21 through 22, though, and about treatment of enemies. If your enemy is hungry, give him bread to eat, and if he is thirsty, give him water to drink. For you will heap burning coals on his head, and the Lord will reward you. Right? It reminds me of George Bernard Shaw. He says, never wrestle with a pig because you'll both get dirty and the pig likes it. Right? And so if you are nice to people who are rude to you, then it's just going to make them more angry, right? Because you're like, man, if I could only get back at them, like if I could devise a master plan to get back at this really rude, angry, unhappy person, well, the way you really do that is you just be nice to them, even when they're being rude. Now, that doesn't mean you have to take abuse or whatever, but what people like that want is for you to become angry. They want to fight with you, right? And so if you're nice to them, they're eventually going to give up, right?
I think that's more true with maybe strangers or not family.
Yeah.
Family members, I don't think it works, but bless them.
Bless their hearts.
Bless their heart.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I find that honestly with students. Like seriously, when you get a student that's just angry, and they may be angry for a legit reason, and you just stay calm and you're nice to them, and you're like, hey, hey, tell me what's wrong, and then they're like, bah! And you're like, okay, well, what do we want to do about this? And eventually they'll calm down because they're like, wait a minute, everybody else is not angry and yelling and stuff. Like, why, maybe I shouldn't be, right? Ding, 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 ding. Yeah, yes. All right, Proverbs 26:3 through 11, right? Fools. Now look, fools are people who, in Proverbs, they're people who refuse wisdom, right? And so that's the thing. And basically what you're saying is they're refusing God. But it makes them act in ways that are foolish, okay? So at 26:3 through 11 is pretty harsh in places. A whip for the horse, a bridle for the donkey, and a rod for the back of fools. Answer not a fool according to his folly, lest you be like him yourself. So there, notice it says, answer not a fool according to his folly, lest you be like him yourself. Then the next verse says, answer a fool according to his folly, lest he be wise in his own eyes. Okay, and we talked about this before. This is a situation where it could go either way. But it is the wisdom that will tell you which is the right answer in the right time. So sometimes you don't answer a fool according to their folly, and sometimes you do answer a fool according to their folly. Maybe like one of those wise times, okay? If this guy is just acting like an idiot and no one's affected by it, well, you know what? I'm just not going to deal with this. However, if this person is acting like a fool and they're the captain of the ship, or they're driving the bus, or whatever it is, at this point, people could suffer however it may be, right? Even if it's just lots more people are irritated or whatever, but it could end up in any number of terrible ways. Well, then at that point, maybe we might want to step in. And whoever sends a message by the hand of a fool cuts off his own feet and drinks violence. Pretty good. And we say that today. You say, like if you trusted somebody, you shot yourself in the foot, right? I trusted that person. Well, I shot myself in the foot on that deal, right? Like a lame man's legs, which hang useless, is a proverb in the mouth of fools. Not only is that pretty harsh on the fool, but it seems a little insensitive for people with disabilities, right? Like one who binds the stone in the sling is one who gives honor to a fool, right? So if you bind the stone in the sling, it's not gonna go when you shoot it, right? So if you give honor to a fool, then you've not really done anything useful. Like a thorn that goes up into the hand of a drunkard. Wait, yeah, that's right. Like a thorn that goes up into the hand of a drunkard is a proverb in the mouth of fools. That's funny because I somehow completely missed that one, but I guess I copied that whole section and then did it. And the thorn that goes up into does anybody have a different translation than that? Like in verse 9?
Mine says like a thorn bush in a drunkard's hand is a proverb in the mouth of a fool.
Okay, so that you can't do anything with the thorn bush, like you're just stabbing yourself. Okay, so that makes more sense. Okay.
My note says, if my first thought is someone else could use this, stop and ask God to reveal to me what I need to hear. That's what my note says. I don't know.
Interesting, yeah, okay. Like an archer who wounds everyone is one who hires a passing fool or a drunkard, right? So again, and I hate to laugh at this because it is like modern day. We have shootings all the time now where people are shot with, I don't call it, it's not friendly fire, it's casualties. Do what?
Stray bullets.
Yeah, stray bullets and such, right? And so that's what this is saying. Like an archer who wounds everyone. So the stray shooting is one who hires a passing fool or a drunkard. Like a dog that returns to his vomit is a fool who repeats his folly, right? So if you mess up and you keep messing up, well, that's just foolish, right? Obviously. And then last but not least, there was this nice one about government that I couldn't bypass. Proverbs 28:2, when a land transgresses, it has many rulers, but with a man of understanding and knowledge, its stability will long continue, right? Does anybody have a different translation? Because there was one that made it very modern. The NLT, does anybody have the NLT? What does Proverbs 28:2 say in the NLT? Does anybody have it?
I can look it up.
All right. But the point is, as the moral decay of a society goes, it goes with it, right?
I got it, Greg.
Yeah.
When there is moral rot within a nation, its government topples easily.
Yeah.
But wise and knowledgeable leaders bring stability.
Right. Okay. And so, and part of the problem with that is we think of that in terms of political parties. And we think, oh, well, this political party is one way, they're all good, and the other political party is they're all bad. And what we're doing is exactly what we talked about earlier. We're putting our trust in people, right? And politicians of all people, right? And I'm not saying that all politicians, I know we make a million jokes about politicians and lawyers or whatever. All politicians are not bad, but it is foolish for us to put our faith in them, right? Because just like in all other people, eventually humans are going to let you down in some way, okay? And what I think with politics, we find, and this is the thing that saddens me the most that I see around, is that people will put their blind faith in politicians on both sides, and no matter what they do, I can't say anything bad, because if I say anything bad about this person who's a member of a political party, then at that point I'm going against my political party. No. Right is right and wrong is wrong. People, listen, every one of us has done wrong, right? And so we should be able to look honestly at people in our government, people around us, our preachers and such, which I'm not saying, Zach's done anything wrong or anything, but we should be able to look at people all around us and say, that thing was good, that thing was bad. They shouldn't have done that, right? Or I'm happy they did that, whatever it is. And listen, to put up a person and say they're always right, no matter what, because I don't want to lose my pride, that doesn't even make sense. We don't do that in our families. We don't put up anybody in our family and say they're always going to be right, they're never going to do wrong. Why would we do it to people that run our country, right? We should be able to call out bad behavior when there's bad behavior. And that doesn't mean that we hate the person, doesn't mean we won't vote for a person, whatever it may be, but we have to be honest so that we have honest conversations, right? I would just think that. Thanks for watching, and please feel free to leave a comment or question. And if you found this video helpful, hit like. And if you would like to be notified when new videos are released, hit subscribe and join us next time as we study the Bible in context.